Priests trapped in decaying human skins, the shocking truth of their 20-day haunting in a small, deserted town. Shadows lurked in every corner like whispers of an unspeakable truth. Local legends told of priests who became prisoners to their own faith, trapped within decaying human skins, their souls forever fighting against a wretched fate. It was said that for 20 agonizing days, the spirits of these men of God roamed the darkness, leaving behind a trail of chilling encounters and unsolved mysteries. Onlookers reported hearing the sound of desperate prayers echoing through the silent streets, prayers that turned into guttural moans, twisting the fabric of reality itself. The very air was thick with secrets that were almost too terrible to breathe. Residents recounted strange happenings, flickering lights illuminating empty church pews, shadowy figures seen at dusk, wilted flowers mysteriously left at the altar, and an oppressive cold that seemed to shift with the setting sun. Children wouldn't dare play outside past sunset, their wide eyes darting to every sound, every rustle in the trees. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones, rumors swirling about sightings of cloaked figures dragging their feet along the cobblestones, as if weighed down by despair and rotting flesh. As night fell, the church bell tolled, not with a steady rise and fall, but in frantic bursts, an urgent admission of horrors within that echoed through the very marrow of anyone who dared listen. Did anyone ever truly unravel the dark enigma that surrounded the church? A group of journalists had set out to discover what lay beneath the surface of these gruesome stories, employing night vision cameras and EVP recorders, wanting to capture whatever form of consciousness might still cling to this world. Heartbeats raced as they approached the church, the wooden door creaking open to reveal a world steeped in unimaginable dread. What would they find? What awaited them in the shelter of those rotting skins? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As they stepped further inside, the air turned heavy, thick with an unexplained sorrow. One journalist stumbled, fingers grazing against the wall. The sensation of cold skin sent shockwaves through his body, a creeping realization settling in that he was not alone. In that moment, a blinding flash lit up the room, catching a glimpse of the very essence of horror. A face, sunken and deathly, stared back at him, eyes hollow and pleading. The group stood frozen, hearts pounding, fear clawing at their throats. What secret had they uncovered? What awaited them in the depths of that church where the spirits begged to be released from their wretched prisons? Questions piled up like a storm on the horizon, threatening to swallow them whole as they made their way deeper into the unholy sanctum. The haunting was just beginning. The sudden flash faded, leaving only darkness and the pounding of hearts echoing in unison. Each journalist felt the weight of stares upon them, yet no one could see who was watching. Desperation twisted through the air, a thick fog of dread wrapping around the group. They huddled close, shivering not just from the cold that seeped into their bones but from something far more chilling. "Did you see that?" whispered Lisa, her voice shaky. The others nodded, eyes wide, but words failed them. Dave, clenching his camera like a lifeline, felt an urge to escape. But as if the very walls conspired to keep them inside, he found that even the thought of retreat felt impossible. "What was that?" Mark asked, glancing over his shoulder as though he expected to see the face again. The question hung heavily in the air, pressing down, daring the others to contemplate the unspeakable truth. A low whisper drifted through the darkness, almost recognizable. "Help us." It coiled around them, gripping their throats. They pressed on, driven by a mixture of terror and insatiable curiosity. Step by step, the corridor stretched before them like an abyss, and their flashlights flickered, creating erratic shadows that danced wildly, merging with their own dread. Just beyond the threshold, an altar stood, the very heart of the church, in stark contrast against the decay around it, adorned with wilted flowers and charred candles that flickered like dying hopes. "Capture everything," Dave urged, his voice barely above a whisper. As he raised his camera, the air crackled with energy. A low thrum resonated through the wood beneath their feet, syncing with the beat of their frightened hearts. They all felt it, a pulsing undercurrent of the past that beckoned them closer. What if they can't move on? Mark murmured. The thought clawed at his stomach like a live wire. Were those figures in cloaks truly trapped by fate, or were they remnants unwilling to let the living forget? Lisa stepped toward the altar, something inexplicably drawing her in. The flickering light revealed dripping crimson splatters, forming grotesque patterns, remnants of more than just rituals performed. A chill crawled down her spine as the realization hit, these were not just stories, they were fragments of a history steeped in pain and suffering. Look! Dave shouted suddenly, pointing his camera toward the altar. The group turned just in time to see shadows twist and morph into tangible forms, like smoke filtering through the dark. Faces emerged, twisted in agony, mouths forming silent screams. The weight of their torment pressed down upon the journalists like a suffocating shroud. Run! Someone shouted, but the words collided against the walls and fell flat, as if the church itself had swallowed the command. Instead, they retreated into the hall, every shadowed corner feeling alive, as though the building watched them with its own malevolent intent. Why are they still here? Lisa thought, her mind racing. What binds them? It was then the bell tolled again, not with urgency, but with despair, echoing through the silence like a funeral dirge, rocking them to their core. As they burst back onto the street, gasping for air, the world outside seemed shockingly normal, a cruel contrast to the horror they witnessed. Yet goosebumps prickled over their skin, the remnants of the chilling welcome still clinging to them. Desperate, they huddled together, eyes darting back toward the church. I couldn't see them, Mark's voice trembled, breaking the eerie quiet. They could be anywhere, even with us watching. With a sudden burst of fear, they turned, but the shadows were all they saw. Yet one thing clawed at them, louder than the pulsing dread of the church, an ancient echo of the priest's pleas now burned in their hearts. Why didn't we ask it? Lisa whispered, the realization striking her. What if the answer is worse than we think? Dave replied, haunted. Maybe we have to go back. The darkness loomed, and the very air around them trembled with unknown dread. What other secrets awaited them? What price would they pay for unwinding this twisted tale? As the bell tolled once more, the horror of their decision smothered any glimmer of hope, plunging them deeper into the enigma that seemingly had no end. Would they dare confront the spirits again, or would the truth lie just beyond their reach, forever interwoven with the shadows they feared? As the bell's mournful toll faded, the group lingered in an uneasy silence, each of them grappling with the weight of their unspoken thoughts. The moon hung high, casting an eerie light over the crumbling structure of the church, making shadows stretch further into the night. The darkness seemed to swoop down, wrapping around their shoulders like a tightening noose. Lisa was the first to break the stillness. We have to go back. There has to be something we missed. Her voice, despite its determination, quivered with uncertainty. Every rational part of her screamed to flee, but curiosity gnawed at her insides, a ravenous beast. Are you insane? Mark shot back, the fear in his voice unmistakable. We just saw ghosts, real ghosts. What if they want something from us? His eyes darted, searching for assurance in the faces of his friends. We have to understand, Dave added, his mind racing. What if this is our chance to shed light on something no one else has dared touch? If they're stuck here, we might be the only ones who can help. His determination kept the group anchored while the fear swirled around them. Help? Mark echoed, a bitter laugh escaping him. You mean risk our lives and possibly get sucked into whatever horror trapped them? But it was too late for doubt. The group barely blinked as Lisa turned back towards the entrance, the path illuminated only by the flickering of the fusebox light hidden somewhere in the hall. The temptation of answers pulled them in even as their hearts raced like caged birds. With careful steps, they returned into the maw of darkness. Lisa led the way, gripping her flashlight tightly, illuminating patches of twisted wood and damp stone as though revealing a secret path through the shadows. The bell tolled again, sending shivers racing down their spines, a desperate reminder of the forces at play. Once inside, the chill intensified, wrapping around them like icy fingers grazing their skin. It was impossible to shake the feeling of being watched. Mark turned his head constantly, lips pressed into a thin line as if trying to ward off the creeping dread of unseen eyes upon them. When they reached the altar, a sense of weight settled over them, thicker than before. The shadows cast by their light seemed to sway mournfully, shapes trapped in turmoil, echoing their anguish. "Look at the altar again," Dave urged, his voice a firm command amidst the mounting anxiety. "It might be different this time." As they moved closer, the altar seemed to pulse and breathe, alive with something unspeakable. Lisa knelt, inspecting the crimson stains that marred its surface. "These marks, they look fresh," she whispered, her fingertips tracing the edges. Suddenly, a piercing scream raw and visceral shattered the silence. It echoed through the church, reverberating off the stone walls. All of their stomachs dropped, hearts racing as they exchanged terrified glances. "Did you hear that?" Mark gasped, his breath quickening. "What if they're angry?" Before they could process the fear flooding their minds, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into total darkness. Panic surged through them, and the group instinctively huddled together, breaths quickening, bodies tense. A moment of silence swallowed the air, followed by whispered voices hollow and haunting. "Help us please," they strained to hear, the words twisting around their sanity. What had they awoken? Dave, heart pounding, lifted his camera again, fingers trembling. "We need to document this," he urged. "We have to capture whatever this is." The flash erupted, illuminating the altar in stark white light. But it revealed more than they hoped for. An apparition appeared, flickering to life, a figure dressed in tattered priest robes, its face blurred, reflecting all the sorrow and anger of centuries. "Why have you come?" It boomed, its voice mixing with an echo of the past. "Will you seek the truth?" Their knees buckled under the weight of that question. It loomed before them, heavy and formidable, a challenge they barely understood. As the figure stepped closer, the shadows deepened, and the air thickened like molasses. One thing became clear: they had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back. "What if it's a trap?" Lisa whispered, fear threading through her words. "Only one way to find out," said Dave, his determination hardening into resolve. But they weren't prepared for what the truth revealed, what fury lay behind generations of silence. Would they uncover the answers they sought, or slip further into the clutches of the haunted memories they unearthed? The only sound was the rapid beating of their hearts as they waited for the priest's next move, and the chilling answer to their reluctant question hung in the air, threatening to unravel them all. The apparition's eyes, though hidden beneath a veil of shadows, seemed to bore into their very souls. "You wish to help us," it echoed, the words laced with an ancient sorrow that made the hairs on the back of Mark's neck stand up. "Then listen." The room felt smaller, as if the air itself was constricting around them. Lisa's heart raced. She felt the weight of fate pressing down, smothering her like a thick fog. Could this really be their chance to make a difference? Or was it all a cruel joke? "Tell us what you need," Dave managed to respond, forcing the words out. His voice was steadier than he felt. "We want to help." The spectral figure wavered, almost flickering out of existence. "You must know every secret held here holds a cost." "What cost?" Mark said, skepticism creeping back in. He shifted his weight, a cold knot of fear forming in his stomach. A low rumble echoed around them, vibrating the walls, as if the church itself was awakening from a long slumber. "The past is not easily shed. The wounds are deep." The priest reached out a hand, translucent fingers stretching toward them, beckoning. Suddenly, a gust of wind whipped through the church, extinguishing the light from Lisa's flashlight. Darkness enveloped them once more, frantic whispers swirling like a tempest in their ears. "Find the truth before it finds you." Panic clawed at their throats. I can't see anything." Lisa cried out, her voice cracking as she groped for her friends in the suffocating blackness. Keep calm. Dave shouted, though his voice wavered too. We have to stay together. A moment later, the flash from Dave's camera ignited the shadows once more. In that split second, a vision materialized, dozens of faces twisted in agony, flickering from one to the next. Each one was a prisoner of despair, their bodies slumped but their eyes wide with fear. Help us. End our torment. They cried, their voices merging into a haunting chorus that filled every inch of the space. The specter of the priest stood amongst them, the center of this spiraling nightmare, hands outstretched, an anchor for their collective agony. What do you want from us? Mark stammered, stunned by the swell of sorrow in the air. Sacrifice, it whispered, the word hanging like a dark cloud. Someone must take the place of another, to break the curse. What? Lisa gasped, stepping back instinctively, her body betraying her resolve. The implications slammed into her like a freight train. You want one of us to do what? Die? We can't know. Mark interrupted, his voice rising in defiance. We didn't come here to trade our lives for answers. Another surge of energy blasted through the church, the air turned electric. You must decide, the priest intoned, voice booming with a gravitas both monstrous and pitiful. One for many or all shall remain cursed. Dread wrapped around them tightly, squeezing until it felt impossible to breathe. The sweat on their brows glistened ominously in the dim light as they exchanged terrified glances. The danger wasn't just the shadows, it was what lay beneath the surface, a truth that bound them to this haunting. We can't, Lisa stuttered, shaking her head vehemently. We can't sacrifice someone. Then the truth will remain buried. The pain, unending, the priest mourned, fading slowly back into the shadows that seemed to thicken like smoke. Choose wisely. Silence enveloped them, a taut tension filled the air. Mark turned to Dave and Lisa, their eyes wide with shared horror. What do we do? He breathed, a tremor in his voice. The question lingered, a heavy weight ready to rip them apart. As they stood, frozen in the gravitas of their predicament, a sinister chuckle echoed through the church, almost mocking. The dark cloaked every corner, whispering promises of truths they had barely begun to uncover. They were left with one, desperate choice. Who would be willing enough to step into the abyss and face the darkness alone? But would the truth set them free, or was it merely another layer of the curse? The fate of their souls hung, suspended in the chilling night. A heavy silence sat between them, thick and suffocating. Mark could feel his heart pounding like a drum, the echoing rhythm matching the mounting panic in his mind. We can't just leave. If we walk out now, we're leaving them behind, he said, gritting his teeth against the fear gnawing at his insides. Are you seriously considering it? Lisa's eyes flashed with doubt. One of us has to die, Mark. That's insane. Her voice trembled, yet beneath the fear lurked an ember of defiance. We can find another way, Dave said, stepping closer, desperation pulling his voice taut. We have to look for answers. Maybe it's not just about sacrifice. Maybe we can break the curse another way. But as he spoke, the shadows deepened around them, twisting and writhing as if in mockery. They felt eyes watching, waiting, hungry for any crack in their resolve. With every heartbeat, the weight of their situation grew heavier. Then, without warning, the church trembled. Dust rained down from the rafters, and the air crackled with energy. Mark fought to keep his balance, raising his camera as a flash erupted from its bulb once more. In the brightness, he glimpsed swirling forms, emotions shadowed by agony and despair before being swallowed again into darkness. Find the truth, the voices urged, reverberating around them, a chant woven from the fabric of their fears. Uncover the past. Okay, Mark said, voice stealing. We can look for clues. Maybe the history of this place. Something that can help. No. Lisa shouted, fear and anger spilling over. We can't waste time. We need a plan, not just wandering around like lost souls. Time is slipping away, you know that. Mark shot back, frustration mingling with desperation. The flickering light cast jagged shadows on the stone walls, and they felt the walls closing in again as if the church were a living thing, tightening its grip. It wanted them to choose. Choose or suffer. Hear ye. The voice of the priest burst forth, slow and deliberate, echoing through the air. Only in the marrow of sacrifice can truth emerge. Are you willing to dive into the burden of another's pain to find your way? A wave of heat rolled over them, whispers curling around their ears, ensnaring their thoughts. Shadows danced menacingly on the periphery as the spectral figures loomed behind the priest, their mouths moving in silent screams. Mark's pulse quickened, a hot rush of decision fueling him. If we dig, we can find out why this curse was placed. How it began. We can find a way to free them without free them. Lisa interrupted with a sharp laugh that seemed to echo off the stone walls. They are trapped. How do you think we can just? The walls responded with their own growl, shaking as if in agreement with her disbelief. The temperature dropped, and a frigid wind howled through the church, chilling them to the bone. The lights flickered, twisting shadows shifting in the corners of their vision. Find the truth or fall into darkness, the priest bellowed, the otherworldly echo of his words rising to a fever pitch. Mark felt a tangible pull toward the altar at the far end, shrouded in darkness like a hidden fate. Let us split up, he said, adrenaline surging. We can cover more ground. We'll regroup back here in 30. Are you insane? Dave shouted, terror crystallizing in his eyes. We can't separate. We'll be picking up each other's pieces unless we all want to become ghosts ourselves, Mark shot back. It's the only way. As he turned toward the altar, the shadows sharpened around them, alive with an electric hunger. Without waiting for a response, he sprinted forward, heart in his throat, determined to uncover the dark secrets this place held. Behind him, Lisa and Dave exchanged terrified glances, but the chilling laughter of the spirits ignited their fight-or-flight instinct. Reluctantly, they followed into the abyss of shadows. As they spread out, a voice echoed down a narrow aisle lined with forgotten pews, whispering their names. It beckoned, alluring yet full of danger, promising answers to questions they hadn't even dared to ask. Don't abandon your hope, not yet, it seemed to whisper, mingling sweetness with its venomous charm. But as they moved deeper into the darkness, the question loomed, what would they really find? The altar awaited, but so did the truth, a truth that could either save them or condemn them forever. Mark felt the shadows closing in like a tightening noose. He glanced over his shoulder towards the flickering light, where he saw Lisa and Dave hesitating, caught in a standoff between fear and duty. He could hear the whispering voices merging into a low hum, a haunting invitation that gripped his heart with dread. Keep moving, he urged, though his own legs felt heavy. As he reached the altar, he paused. The air thickened, a miasma of dread wrapping around him like a shroud. The altar loomed ahead, dark and looming, draped in tattered cloth that fluttered as if stirred by an unseen breeze. He could feel a pull, a magnetic force urging him forward. He was drawn towards a dusty old book, resting on the altar like a time-worn relic lost to the ages. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind him, jolting Mark from his reverie. He spun around, just in time to see a heavy wooden beam fall from the ceiling, smashing into the ground where they had been standing moments before. Dust and debris filled the air, and the room shook, rattling the stained glass windows. The church did not want them here, it was alive, and it was angry. Mark. Lisa's voice broke through the haze of dust, sharp and panicked. We need to get out. No. He shouted back, fighting against the panic rising in his throat. We're not done here. We need answers. But even he could hear the uncertainty lacing his words. That he turned back to the book, finding the cover etched with ancient symbols that glowed faintly beneath the grime. His fingers trembled as he reached out, wiping away the dust. The moment his skin made contact, a shudder rippled through the church, as if it recognized him or rejected him. A sudden crash startled him again, this time from the right. It was Dave, stumbling backward as a shadowy figure lunged at him from behind a collapsed wall. Mark's breath hitched as he watched helplessly. The figure melted into the darkness, impossible to distinguish from the swirling shadows. Was it a spirit trying to warn them or a malevolent force eager to claim their souls? "Run!" Mark yelled, breaking his trance. He surged forward, grabbing Dave's arm, pulling him away from the altar. "We need to regroup." Lisa darted ahead, her movements frantic as she scanned the encroaching darkness for any signs of escape. "This way!" she shouted, pointing to a narrow corridor shrouded in gloom. As they pounded down the aisle, the shadows twisted and shifted, forming grotesque shapes that elongated and reached for them. The whispers crescendoed, an almost deafening chorus pressing into their minds. "Join us!" embraced the suffering Dave clutched his head, eyes wide with terror. "It's getting into my head. We have to stay focused." Mark yelled, urgency surging. "We need to find a way out." But as they ran, the air thickened with despair. Mark could feel tears threatening to spill down his cheeks, not just from the fear but from an overwhelming sorrow that wrapped around him like a suffocating blanket. There were stories here, trapped souls crying for release. He glanced back at the altar, heart pounding. "What if we destroy it?" he shouted, voicing the thought that clung to his mind. "What if that's the key?" "Are you crazy?" Lisa shot back, but there was a glimmer of resolve in her eyes. Mark's pulse raced as he thought about the book, the way it had felt under his fingers. Maybe the book contains the spell or the history they've been holding on to. If we can break its power, maybe we can free everyone. An eruption of panic surged from Dave. What if it wakes something worse? What if the shadows writhed angrily, as if acknowledging their conversation, and from deep within, a chilling laughter echoed, warped and unnatural, piercing through their hearts. Something was stirring in the darkness. Feeling a surge of defiance, Mark turned towards the altar. "We have to try." He sprinted back, the weight of their fears and the destiny of the trapped souls pressing heavily on his shoulders, but just as they began to approach the altar again, the flickering lights extinguished completely. They were plunged into darkness, the oppressive, suffocating darkness that clawed at their sanity. "Mark!" Lisa's voice trembled, fear spilling over. "We can't see." And then, a booming voice echoed from the depths of the shadows, sending a shock of terror through their very bones. "You seek truth. It lies beyond, and once you've seen, there is no going back." Mark's heart raced faster than ever, and deep within, he felt the undeniable call of the altar beckoning him forward into the unknown. What awaited beyond this darkness, the truth or eternal damnation? Mark stood frozen, heart thudding in his chest like a drum echoing in the silence. The chilling voice had lodged itself in his throat, leaving him gasping. Shadows twisted around him, thick and almost sentient, creeping ever closer. He wondered for a fleeting moment if they could all sense the impending truth, the burden of knowledge that hovered like a storm just out of reach. "Mark, we need to go. Now." Lisa's urgent whisper sliced through his stupor, but her voice trembled, as terror curled around her words. The darkness seemed to listen, to anticipate their next move. Swallowing hard, Mark stepped forward instinctively. Forward into the abyss, where he could almost feel a heartbeat, slow and steady, an echo of something sinister. The altar loomed like a titan ready to pounce. "Don't let it in, Mark. Fight it." Dave's voice was frantic, spurring him into motion as they all drew closer again, forcing the dread from his mind. Mark reached for the book once more, fingers brushing against the ancient cover. The moment he touched it, searing pain shot through him, a jolt that clawed at his insides. He cried out, stumbling back, but instead of retreating, he dug deeper, determined. Shadows curled at his feet, grasping like desperate hands, while the whispers swelled into a cacophonous melody, inviting, seductive. "What is this place?" he gasped, wrestling with both pain and curiosity. "What truth lies within?" Suddenly, the book sprang open, pages flipping wildly, filled with cryptic symbols that glowed brighter with each turn. A light broke through the darkness, illuminating their surroundings like a spotlight in a theater. The figures of long-lost souls appeared, trapped within the very fabric of the church, their eyes wide and pleading, mouths moving silently in a desperate chorus. "Do you hear them?" Lisa murmured, awestruck. They're begging for help." Mark squinted as he studied the words on the pages, his mind racing to piece together the meaning. One particular inscription jumped out at him, twisted symbols pairing with engravings of chained souls. They were priests trapped, each binding themselves to the church's will. "Are you serious?" Dave's eyes widened as he turned to look at the apparitions, horrified. "They did this willingly?" "No," Mark whispered, realization sinking in like a stone. "They were manipulated, sacrificed for power." As if in response, the shadows erupted, swirling into a tempest, igniting the church with fury. The thundering voice returned, now laced with malice, "You dare unearth our secrets. You are not the first to seek this truth, nor will you be the last. You will belong to us just like the rest." The words crashed into him like waves in a violent sea. Mark's breath came in gasps, panic igniting stormy urgency. "We're running out of time." He turned to grab Lisa and Dave, pulling them toward the altar once more. "We have to destroy it. It's not just about them, it's about us too." The book throbbed under his touch, sending shockwaves through him as the apparitions screamed out in futile warning. "Free us! Free yourselves!" They cried as the shadows writhed, desperate to cling to them, heart pounding. Mark shouted towards the raging darkness. "We're breaking this cycle. This ends tonight." With a sudden surge of determination, he ripped a page from the book, and the shadows recoiled as if stung. The deafening laughter faltered, replaced by agonized wails. Hope ignited within him, a fragile flame that dared to challenge the encroaching night, but just as he prepared to cast the page into the altar fire, the ground trembled violently. The entire church seemed to protest, groaning under the weight of its cursed history. Suddenly, the floor beneath them split open, revealing a gaping maw of darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. "Mark!" Lisa shrieked, her grip tightening around his arm. "What do we do?" Dave yelled, panic flooding his voice. Mark's mind raced. Behind him, the book sat ominously, urging him on. "We plunge in. We have to face it." As they stood on the edge of an abyss, the whispers rose again, enticingly. Pleading, "Join us, embrace the suffering," and with that, they dove forward, not knowing if they would be consumed or find a way to break free from the church's malevolent grip. What awaited them in that dark void? The answer loomed closer, just out of reach, threatening to shatter everything they believed. The moment they plunged through the darkness, a weight enveloped them, like diving into an icy ocean. Mark felt the pressure squeezing him from all sides, each second stretching into infinity. It was suffocating, blinding. He fought against the panic that surged up his throat, clenching his teeth and willing himself to stay grounded. Had they made a dreadful mistake? Then, in the depths of shadow, light flickered, a dim glow that pieced together the void. It revealed twisted corridors carved from stone, lined with faded murals of long-forgotten prayers. He could feel the souls of the priests swirling around him, their sorrow and despair cutting through the darkness. "Where are we?" Lisa's voice trembled beside him, a soft beacon amidst the chaos. "I don't know." Mark shouted back, glancing at Dave, whose wide eyes with terror mirrored his own. Together they stumbled forward into the heart of the abyss, unsure if they were moving deeper into danger or toward salvation. The bruised walls pressed against them, whispering secrets of pain and betrayal. "This is where they were sacrificed," Dave finished, his words catching in the air like smoke. Suddenly, the ghostly figures materialized around them, priests once vibrant and proud, now shrouded in tattered robes that flowed like wisps of smoke. Their faces were etched with anguish, mouths moving in silent screams. Mark felt a chill race down his spine, gripping his heart with icy fingers. "What do you want from us?" he shouted, voice breaking through the silence. One of the apparitions stepped closer, a flicker of life in its eyes. "Free us," it whispered, echoing in the still air. You must understand what binds us. As the word settled in, Mark felt a yearning to help, a deep compassion rising within him. But how? What can we do? Destroy the altar, the figures chorused, their ethereal voices blending into a haunting melody. Break the cycle of sacrifice. This was never about our suffering, another figure added, brow furrowed in sorrow. Your pain brings power to the darkness. You must reclaim it. Mark's thoughts spun as realization struck him. The truths hidden from them were now painfully clear. The priests had been used, as vessels of sacrifice, to channel the very darkness they were tangled up in. This was a cycle that needed to end. Then let us break it, Lisa said, her voice steadying. But how do we even get back? Before reply reached their ears, the darkness around them shifted violently. They were torn from their resolve, pulled through a crackling void. Mark felt himself being hurled into a blinding light, then darkness again and again, a dizzying dance, until at last they staggered into a familiar space, back in the church, around the ominous altar. Sweat dripped down his face as he took in their surroundings. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. The oppressive weight still loomed, but now the whispers were clearer, more urgent. Now! Mark yelled with newfound defiance, clutching the ripped page. Now is the time. But as he took a step toward the altar, it trembled violently, shards of the ancient stone exploding around them. The dark voice thundered again, furious and desperate. You cannot escape us. You belong to the shadows now. Lisa stumbled back, and the ground began to crack beneath their feet, tendrils of shadow reaching and curling in all directions. What do we do? She shouted, fear racing through her veins. Mark's heart raced. They had come too far to turn back now. We fight. We end this once and for all. With a swift motion, he thrust the page toward the altar, fueled by rage and hope, but before it could touch the fire, shadows erupted like tentacles, wrapping around his arms, wrestling for control. Let go! He roared, wrestling against the grasping dark. The shadows hissed, a cacophony echoing in his ears, filling him with deafening dread and urgency, and then, just as the page was about to touch the flames, a vision flashed before him, the priests, their forms breaking free, eyes shining in gratitude, waiting for his decision. Time froze. Could he truly unleash them? Mark! Dave screamed, and Mark felt the book pulsating with energy, demanding his will. What would happen if he took the leap? What terror awaited if he failed? Just as the shadows pulled tighter, his decision stood fragile in the air, teetering on the brink of devastation. The shadows squirmed, pulling Mark harder, their icy grip feeling like a noose tightening around his soul. His heart pounded in his chest, and fear clawed at his throat, but the desperate faces of the priests flickered in his mind. He couldn't turn back, he wouldn't hold on. He yelled, mustering every ounce of strength. With a fierce determination, he pushed forward, channeling all his energy into the page. The plan took form in his mind, half-formed but urgent. He thought of freedom, of light cutting through darkness. I choose to fight. He slammed the page against the altar, and the moment it made contact, the world erupted into chaos. A blinding flash enveloped the chamber, with light churning through the darkness, pushing back the shadows that had ensnared him. The tendrils shrieked, recoiling as the brightness swallowed them whole. Mark! Lisa's voice pierced through the confusion, filled with a mix of terror and hope. He could barely see her through the radiant blaze, but he felt the energy surging from the altar, an ancient power responding to his will. As the light exploded outward, illuminating every corner of the chamber, the apparitions surged toward the source. They reached out with trembling hands towards Mark. Free us! They cried in unison, their voices now harmonizing powerfully. He strained against the smothering darkness. I will. I promise. He yelled, tears flooding his eyes. The shadows hissed angrily, twisting and writhing like wounded serpents. Suddenly, an overwhelming force blasted through him, engulfing him and pushing back everything that sought to claim him. The energy surged as Mark bore down, wild and resolute. He could feel the binding magic unraveling, a tsunami of liberation breaking the hold of centuries of torment. As the darkness withdrew, he could hear the anguished cries diminishing, melting into relief. The priests began to shimmer, their forms shifting back, revealing their true selves beneath those haunted skins. They were not merely shadows but lives once full of light, now free to ascend, but then, just as hope threatened to overwhelm fear, the altar began to tremble violently. Beneath them, the ground cracked open, a swirling chasm of darkness emerging anew. "You think you can end the cycle?" A voice bellowed from the depths below, dripping with malice. "This will only bring forth worse horrors. Mark. We need to leave now." Dave cried, pulling at Mark's arm as if trying to drag him back from the precipice. But Mark stood firm, eyes locked onto the altar that now pulsed like a heartbeat. He understood in that moment destroying the altar was not just about freeing the priests but about confronting the depth of their power. They needed to sever the entire string. Together. Now. Mark shouted, rallying his friends. The three of them stood united, ready to make the final strike. "We have to destroy it before it pulls us back." As they approached it, each step crackled with energy. Muscles tensed, breath caught in their throats, they charged forward to shatter the stronghold of despair. Adrenaline coursed through their veins. With one collective strike, they collided with the altar, pushing the energy of their shared resolve and the power from the page into one final blow. It was now or never. Then, just as they were about to swing their fists down in unison, the world spun again, the chamber tearing itself apart. Mark felt himself being pulled away into the darkness once more, voices ringing in his ears, "You cannot escape," and then, silence. Mark found himself in a stark, unfamiliar space, a different kind of darkness, devoid of sound, yet heavy with weight. The air felt thick, oppressive. What just happened? He whispered, a sense of dread creeping over him. He felt the lingering pulse behind his eyes, the tug of battle unfinished. Had they succeeded, or had they just awakened something worse? As shadows flickered around him, he realized this was no paradise. Something was stirring in the abyss, waiting, watching, and it was coming for them. The chill in the air seemed to mock their trembling bodies as Mark, Lisa, and Dave struggled to gather their wits. The remnants of the church's horror clung to them like a second skin. They could still feel the weight of the priest's anguished plea, the crippling despair echoing in their hearts. "What now?" Lisa whispered, voice small and shaky. Mark looked around, the dark void stretching endlessly in every direction. "We have to find a way out, and fast. The altar, we have to finish it." He could still feel the pull of the shattered altar, the unresolved energy binding them to this realm of shadows. It was an unspoken truth hanging in the air, they had gone too far to turn back now. "Are we sure it's even, over?" Dave asked, fear flooding his voice, still shaking from their recent encounter. "What if it's only the beginning?" "We need to break this cycle," Mark replied fiercely, determination setting his jaw. We felt the priest's desperation. They're still trapped somewhere, caught in this endless torment. If they had power to manipulate, then we must be able to channel that power back. Mark closed his eyes, willing the remnants of darkness away, focusing on the memory of light bursting through the shadows, the faces of the priests now free from their torment. He thought of their cries for help, the outstretched hands. He needed to harness that primal connection they once shared, the tug of the earth beneath their feet. A flicker of light broke through the suffocating dark, illuminating a swirling mass of shadows ahead. "This way!" Lisa exclaimed, her voice almost a mantra guiding them forward. They pounded through the darkness, hearts racing as dread threatened to drag them back into despair. As they moved ahead, the shadows writhed and twisted, distorting their surroundings. The whispers returned, climbing in volume, drawing ever closer like a physical force. "Join us, be lost forever," they hissed, threatening to undermine their fragile resolve. "Stay focused," Dave shouted, breaking through the cacophony of voices that clawed at their minds. "We're almost there." They raced toward the growing light, the oppressive weight giving way to something brighter, hopeful that in a moment of clarity, they spilled out into the remnants of the church's heart. The altar lay before them broken, but still pulsing with energy waiting to be unraveled. Mark felt an instinctive rage surge within him, fueled by the centuries of torment housed in that place. "This is it!" Mark shouted. "We finish it now." He raced towards the altar, the memories of the priests guiding each step. "We're not just fighting darkness, we're reclaiming their light." Dave and Lisa flanked him, standing shoulder to shoulder, the bond of their friendship igniting a fire within them. Together, they cried, and with shared determination, they thrust their hands toward the remnants of the altar. As they laid their palms against the moss-covered stone, a blinding light erupting from their fingertips washed over them, an ethereal wave of energy crashing through. The shadows recoiled violently, like a beast caught in the grip of the light's blaze, shrieking in agony. In that moment, Mark felt warmth blooming within him, filling him with purpose. He shouted over the roar, "Let their suffering go. Break the chains." The altar shook violently, light racing through the shadows like a beacon. Crackling energy raced along the arms and into their hearts, igniting resolve as one final surge ran through them. They shouted, casting aside hesitation, "You are free. You are free." As the words echoed, something extraordinary happened. The shadows around them quaked, and in a burst of energy the altar exploded in bright light, scattering the darkness like ashes caught in the wind. Light engulfed the space, enveloping the church and shattering the chains of despair woven around the priests' souls. Their spectral forms erupted around them, shimmering and radiant, freed, released, a chorus of joy erupting in harmonious relief. In that golden moment, Mark turned and locked eyes with Lisa and Dave. Relief washed over them, the weight of despair lifting as they bore witness to the redemption happening around them. The faces of the priests turned towards them, grateful, serene, their expressions now reflecting peace, and then they began to fade, rising upward until they melted into the light, like stars blending into the dawn. With the last flicker of light, the room began to collapse, the weight of history pressing down until they felt the ground quaking beneath their feet. "We're running out of time," Dave shouted, urgency clawing at his throat. Grabbing each other's hands, they dashed toward the doorway, narrowly escaping the imploding shell of the church, the air thick with the scent of liberation and ash. They didn't look back. Bursting into the cool night air, they stumbled out into the moonlight, breathless and alive, the oppressive hold of the church finally shattered behind them. The howling winds calmed, and the darkness lifted, a world reborn. As they stood together, watching the flames flicker, warmth blooming in their chests, it felt like they had come through hell and emerged on the other side. Ever so delicately, shadows of the priests seemed to linger beside them, watching over their freedom. Mark sighed heavily, releasing the dread that had bound him for so long. "We did it," he said softly, but the realization sunk deep. "It's finally over." "Yeah," Lisa replied, blinking against the brightness of the moonlight. "We freed them." But as the relief washed over them, an unshakable doubt gnawed at the back of Mark's mind. Was this truly the end? He glanced back toward the charred ruins of the church, shadows dancing along the remains. Would the priests find peace, or would darkness seek another vessel? "Let us go home," Dave said, breaking the reverie. They nodded, their hearts a mix of heavy gratitude and haunting uncertainty, leading them forward into an uncertain dawn. As they stepped away, the air hums with possibilities, the fight against darkness perhaps never truly over, but for now, they had conquered. They made a choice. Facing the dark and emerging into the light might have rewritten their fate, but what lay ahead held new stories to be written. They walked bravely into the night, hearts still pounding with remnants of adrenaline, only to discover a different journey awaited them, one filled with wonder and hope beyond the grasp of shadows. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this shocking ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters. Let's keep this incredible community alive.